Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&As. And this time we're going to try something new. We're going to do these in 2 segments, but I'm going to give you 16 questions instead of 15, done over 2 videos instead of 5. So let's get this started. First question. Static hold training for hypertrophy. Does it work? Anything that provides progressive tension overload will induce hypertrophy. That would include static hold training, partial rep training, full range of motion training. Doesn't matter, they'll all induce hypertrophy. The problem with static hold training is that it has a lower rate of producing performance, particularly through the full range of motion, because you're not getting all the joint angle specificities you want. You have to have more specialized equipment. You have to have access to far more weight. And then on top of that, there is a higher risk factor, because I've messed around with some of these strong range partials and static and traction training years ago. And what I found is that things like your bench press, for example, you can add 300 to 400 pounds over your full range of motion lift. So if you can bench 300 pounds on the bench press, you can do these static holds with 600 or 700 pounds. The wear and tear on equipment for something that is questionable if it's going to give you as good of hypertrophy, it may be slightly inferior, but it does definitely induce hypertrophy. But you're losing all those other performance elements, and it's just the risk of injury, the wear and tear on all the equipment, needing additional safeties makes it not really worth it, because it doesn't give you any benefits that you're not getting in terms of hypertrophy from doing regular full range of motion training. So it works, but it's a bit gimmicky, and it's been used to sell a couple of books over the years, but it's nothing special. It's nothing that I would really waste my time with, unless it's something you want to do on rare occasion for fun. All right, next question. I'm on your novice 5x5, and I seem to have a lot of forward lean on squats. What can I do to fix this? Any tips to fix forward lean? Could be a lot of things. It is most likely probably your technique. You're probably trying to, when you're a raw squatter, you're probably trying to sit back too much. You're not keeping your chest upright enough. Your core may not be strong enough. Now, the extra core work and stuff I have in there will fix that, but a lot of it's going to be the fact that you're too loose, you're not getting tight enough, you're not getting your scapula pulled back enough, keeping your chest up enough, getting that full deep breath and bracing your core before you go down. And you may be trying to sit back too much on top of that. Those are usually going to be your easiest fixes for a less advanced lifter. All right, next question. If you have a genetic advantage to a lift, such as long arms for the deadlift, does this mean that you use less muscle to perform the lift than an average person? And would you need to lift a heavier weight to achieve the same results? I'm going to assume you mean same results as in hypertrophy, and irrespective of what sort of mechanical leverage advantage you're getting, whether it's limb links or even muscle insertion points, because where, say, your triceps insert in your arms and where your pecs insert in your chest can affect your leverages on your bench press. That's why some people, one of the reasons why some people are genetically stronger than others and have a really good size to strength ratio, they're stronger than you would think they should be for their size, is oftentimes those genetic leverages. So the answer is, will you need to lift a heavier weight to get the same tension and workload on those muscles to induce the same amount of hypertrophy? Yes, yes you will. And it's the same with the longer arms on the deadlift, because you're pulling the bar a shorter range of motion. You're doing a partial compared to someone with shorter arms. So yes, you will either need to do more reps or add more weight to the bar to get the same amount of tension that they're getting from the exercise. So yeah, absolutely. Mechanical advantage is nice because it lets you be stronger on different lifts, but it also means that in order to get the same amount of size, you have to lift heavier. So it's all give and take when it comes to genetics like that. It balances out in the end. All right, next question. When I do my big 3 training, I do squat, dead, and bench in that order. I notice my bench is a bit weaker sometimes, have bad leg cramping. Should I do the bench first? Note, bench comp 5 months out. If you're doing a bench only comp in 5 months, I would probably switch over to doing bench press first. Now, if in the rest of your training though, you want to do it in the order you're doing it, I can tell you what's causing it. You're almost certainly getting hamstring cramps The hamstring cramps are as a result of the fatigue from the deadlift. And when you're set up tight on a proper power bench, your hamstrings are going to be contracted. They're going to be put into a flexed position on top of that while you're driving through your legs. They're going to cramp up a lot easier. If you're not perfectly hydrated with great electrolyte balance, they're going to cramp up as a result of bench pressing after deadlifting. A couple things you can do about that. One, you probably need to be drinking a lot more fluid before you train. Number two, since you're no longer worried about hamstring strength because you've already done your squats and deadlifts, you're done with the hamstrings for the day, static stretching isn't going to make them weaker. Well, it will make them weaker, but it's irrelevant at that point. So go ahead and stretch your hamstrings out. Once you finish all the deadlifting before you bench press, spend some time doing some heavy static stretching and some hurdler stretches on those hamstrings before you bench. And hopefully that should sort that out for you between the stretching and the extra water. But if you're approaching a bench-only meet coming up here soon, you may want to prioritize your bench press anyways and put it in the front of your routine. But those other tips will be helpful when you want to rotate it back later to after your deadlift when you're training. All right, next question. What are your thoughts on using 10x3 and 4x6 Chad Waterbury method for the general hypertrophy phase of a periodized powerlifting program? You want to be honest, I actually like Chad Waterbury. I think he's a good coach. I think he puts out some good material. I think those rep and set protocols he prescribes there are perfect for hypertrophy for a strength athlete. All the data and scientific literature suggests that they are good enough, just as good as regular hypertrophy work. All the real world experiences of every single strength and conditioning coach I know who's compared athletes in different sports using these sort of protocols will agree. A 10x3 or a 4x6 will induce very excellent hypertrophy very quickly, and they can be used successfully for a hypertrophy phase or a general build-up phase or even accumulation type phases in your periodization for a powerlifter or for any type of strength athlete. Perfectly acceptable, and it will do the job. All right, next question. The UK's new Prime Minister of Health, and people not giving her credit because she's fat. Would you credit her for knowing much about health? Actually, this is not the UK. I'm trying to remember. Oh God, you guys are gonna get mad if I get this wrong. I think she's the Dutch Prime Minister, the one that's in the news right now, and she's not fat. She is morbidly obese, and for her to be the health minister, given that we know that that level of obesity is completely lifestyle oriented, we know that that level of obesity massively increases the risk of every single major lifestyle induced disease, most types of cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. I think it is problematic that a person like that is being listed as the Minister of Health, because they clearly have gone in their personal choices in their life in the opposite directions of the advice they need to be giving. And while if they still give good advice, that's perfectly fine. She may very well be qualified, but the concern is that since she is clearly not concerned about her own health enough, the concerns are that her policies may reflect her own bias. And it may not even be intentional on her part if that happens. So it is a valid criticism, but I don't live there, so it's not necessarily my problem. However, I do definitely see the criticism and why it exists. It's reasonable criticism based upon that. Doesn't mean she can't do the job. It just means that the criticism itself is valid and reasonable. All right, next question. Building leg strength. Squat and deadlift whilst training pre-fatigued all the time due to other sports-related activities as a beginner. Is it possible in the long term? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Even if you're a field athlete, let's say you play football or some other field sport, and you're on your feet a lot, you're moving a lot because of that, and you are fatigued all the time, your body will adapt to it as long as you're giving it enough food, particularly carbs, and enough sleep, and you're used to the workload. You will eventually adapt, and it will no longer impede your gains at all. You will be able to gain size and strength in your legs eventually, as long as you don't start making major changes there. Now, if you're doing a certain amount of field activity and you're adapted to it, you go to training and you're already used to it, you'll be okay. What you're going to run into problems is when you start increasing the volume of your other sports related activity in different phases. You're going to find that when you do that, you're going to have to readapt to that new volume, unless you do it very gradually. That will fatigue you and mess up with your recovery and adaptation to your strength training. So you're going to need to be aware of that when you start adding in, an extra 3 or 4 hours of workout on the field every week. You're going to find that your strength gains are going to stall and sometimes regress slightly until you readapt and get used to that extra volume in addition to the strength training. So just be aware of that. Those changes need to be gradual, and when they aren't, it can cause you to regress a little bit. All right, next question. Currently making strength gains on mad cows, but not gaining weight. Any advantage to eating more and gaining weight, even though I seem to be recomping fairly easily? You know what? I wouldn't. If you want to gain a lot faster and you know you really want to bulk, you could increase the calories, and yes, there will be benefits. You will gain strength and size a little faster. Absolutely. But if you're running the mad cows right now and you have found that sweet spot to where you are gaining strength and you are recompositioning without gaining weight, I would personally consider, unless you have a reason to change it, I would consider riding that out a little bit. Ride that wave out until you stall. Because you're getting the best of both worlds right now. I wouldn't mess with it. I would keep it where it is until you stall. Then when you start stalling on it and you're no longer recompositioning effectively, because these things are oftentimes short-lived, then go ahead and bump the calories up another 10% or so that you can start gaining some extra muscle to go with the strength and to get past that stall. But if it's working for you right now, take advantage of it, because it won't last. Use it to your advantage while you can. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.